So here is, the birth of Armond Joy Blackwater. In the early hours of June 1st, 1953, I awakened to a terrible pushing pressure on my butt. Earlier in the day, I had stretched and rotated so the blood was rushing to my brain. It felt right at the time, but now there was this annoying downward pressure upon my posterior. I was being pushed toward a small round portal. I tried to hold back with my tiny arms, but then the dam broke and I was washed downstream through a canal into a brilliantly lit room with the gaudiest aquamarine walls. Who decorated this fucking place? My tiny brain screamed. I looked back toward the gate my head had just popped through. How did my enormous cranium squeeze through that tiny opening? My ass was being squeezed by some powerful force. Some guy with whiskey breath was yanking on my shoulders, trying to wrest me from the grasps of the cave. He smelled like that poet cat I'd met about a century before in one of the galactic bars I hung out in. What was his name? Oh yeah, Ed Poe. EP smoked a pipe with fragrant herbs. However, this strange masked cat had a nasty cigarette dangling from his lips. Ashes fell onto my face. Smoke filled my tiny lungs. I coughed and choked, spitting up fluid. Spitting up the fluid that I'd been drinking for months. Man, was this ever turning out to be a below average day. My ears were assaulted by shrill screaming that corresponded to my ass being squeezed tighter as the drunkard pulled harder on my shoulders. The screaming got louder. Now I could hear two voices screaming. Man, it was loud. Everything had been nicely muffled back in the cave. Out in the open air, the sounds were painfully loud. I suddenly realized that one of the screaming voices was mine. Cool. I had a pretty good set of pipes. I shifted to a high harmony with the other voice. We were cooking, man. A sweet duet. Arms flailing, legs thrusting. Finally, my ass cleared whatever hurdle was blocking it, and I popped all the way out. That's when I caught the first sight of my wee. Whoa! I'm a boy. How cool was that? I had a lot to learn. The air smelled foul and tasted worse. I noticed that the other screaming voice was coming from my host. The drunkard laid me on her belly and she started to calm down. But soon she was crying deliriously. Why? I really don't know. There was a white-haired woman smiling down at me. She was saying something to me. Everybody else in the room was speaking English. But this lady was speaking a language that sounded familiar, but that I couldn't identify at first. What was that language? I knew I had heard it in my travels. The answer was on the tip of my tongue. Then she said two magic words. Hokahe. She was speaking Assiniboine, a dialect of Stony language. She must be a Sioux Indian. Cool. I started putting phrases together as best as I could recall. She was greeting me into the world. Hinyahana. Welcome and soon. Hinyahana, she cooed. But it was her expression that spoke volumes of how happy she was to see me. She repeated Hokahe. Hokahe. She was instructing me to enjoy every day of my life, for I would never know which day was my last. This was my first. Lesson understood. Grandmother and I conversed via expression for a while until she guided me and my tiny mouth up to a generous fountain of nourishing milk. Wow, what was this? I glanced over while suckling to observe that there was another fountain nearby. Is this all for me? Cool. Cool. Suddenly, I felt like we were gliding and the lights started blinking. I tried to look up, but nothing was worth tearing me away from this tasty meal. This was some tasty stuff. They didn't serve anything like this in any bar I'd ever frequented. All the good stuff I enjoyed while flowing in the amniotic sea, but now it had flavor. It wasn't flowing directly into my belly. I actually got to taste this banquet. The new experience was wonderful. I sucked away despite being rolled into a room with puke-colored walls. People were jabbering around me. Hey, I'd appreciate a little consideration here, okay? Do you all know what I've just been through? They didn't hear, didn't care. I heard my grandmother say repeatedly, Armond Joy, Armond Joy, Armond Joy. Years later, I learned what really happened. It is Sioux tradition to celebrate birth with a feast. Granny Blackwater was starving. I mean, she'd just gone through, 100 hours of, not that long. She'd gone through a lot of hours of waiting for me to pop out, and there was no food along the way, because they don't feed the mother. Yeah. Granny was fucking starved. Granny was starving and thought the nurses were asking her for what she wanted to eat. She had seen a bowl of candy bars on our way to the room and asked for her favorite snack, Almond Joy. Almond Joy has nuts. Actually, the nurses were asking Granny for my name. Mom was out cold. I was getting full and close to nodding off too. The only person left awake was a Sioux woman with a limited English vocabulary and heavy accent. The nurses heard her repeat, "Armond Joy," several times and wrote that down as my name. Armond Joy Blackwater. Male. Born June 1, 1953. Weight 7 pounds, 5 ounces, 39 inches. And that's how I got my name. Lightness shone upon his likeness with a brilliant luster. Assemble the numbers. The time has come to stand. No worry, shall the new dawn bring. Holy lightness, trade the torture for the laughter.